So, welcome to an introduction to Python programming with Arjun and myself, Luke. So let's get started. So today's lesson objectives, we want to understand what Python is, because some of you might be sitting in this class right now not even knowing what Python is, just having heard some things about it and wondering what it is. We want to understand how to program our outputs in Python, and we'll be going over outputs in a little bit more detail, but that's basically the things that we send to the user and the things that they can see out of the program. Understand how to program inputs. Now these are sort of the reverse of outputs. Inputs are the things that the users actually put in to the software, into the program, that then eventually will produce us some kind of output. We want to understand the need to store our inputs in Python. So these things that we're inputting to the actual machine, the machine needs to somehow save that information so it can use it to produce some kind of output. And then finally, we want to understand how to store these inputs in variables in Python, which takes the last learning point one bit further, which is really cool and really, really useful to do. So here's a little bit of a joke before the lesson. You might be this guy on the left here, a little bit confused, looking at the screen, not understanding anything how programming's like. But afterwards, you'll be a whiz kid like this guy here on the right. So don't worry and stick with us, and it'll be good fun. So what actually is Python? Now, Python is a really, really powerful programming language used by thousands of companies across the world. Python has become one of the most popular languages to program in and learn. And it's one of those languages that if you can do well, it will be super easy to get a job in the future because people absolutely love Python developers. Python is super, super powerful, and it does things slightly differently to the languages that are sort of, or that were mainstream. So there's this site on the internet called GitHub, which is where people upload their code and things to work on. And what it does is it can look at what languages are most popular. And very recently, in the past few months, the Python language actually overtook Java on GitHub, which might sound like some kind of foreign stuff to you, but basically what that means is Python is becoming really, really powerful. So probably the most important part of this lesson is actually figuring out how we run our code. So you want to go to this link here that we will keep posting in chat. I think Arjun's done a fantastic job of that so far. So make sure that you guys are opening this in a new browser, in a new tab, sorry, so it doesn't get rid of the call if you're doing it through the browser. And you'll come up with a window that looks a lot like this. Now, remember, if you guys are having any problems with this, anything at all, make sure to drop that in the chat. We'll help with that because we don't want anybody to fall behind on this bit. So what this basically is our, as it says, online Python interpreter. And this is how we're going to be able to actually run our Python code from our machines without needing to download any software. This is why Python's so cool, because we can do this so easily. So basically what we've got is this big gray box here, and this is where we're actually going to type our code. We've got this bit here that we don't need to worry about, but there's this little arrow here that we can do to just minimize that to make our view look a lot better. So I'll just do that again so you guys can see this little arrow here, just fold that in, then we've got a much nicer view. Really important, make sure that the language up here at the top is Python 3. That's the language that we want to be running for these sessions. And then finally, what we can do is actually get rid of this code, and then we can start to actually program in here. Now, just to make sure things work, it's a good idea to type print. Don't worry, we'll be going over this in a minute, but it's always a nice idea just to make sure it works. Print, brackets. Now, brackets are basically telling the print function what to print, but don't worry, we'll explain that later. Then in speech marks, I'm going to just put hello world, exclamation mark. Now, if you've ever seen a programming tutorial before, they usually start along the lines of this. So when you've written your code, no matter what it is in this interpreter, we go to this little green button here in the top, and then we hit run. Now that'll take a second, and down below here in this black box, I hope you guys can see this all right. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So down below here in this black box, we can see hello world has been printed out, which is awesome. And if you guys have done that along at home, you've actually just ran your first Python program. Now I'm just going to close my window because it is getting cold in here. Sorry about that, guys. So straight back to it. Yeah, if you've done that, you've just ran your first Python code. So well done. That's awesome. And it's going to be the first of many, many more. So like I said, running our code, you should get some output in this window down below. And if you've done that, well done. You just ran your first piece of Python code, which is awesome. And it's a great start on your journey. So let's talk about outputs. These are values which get sent from the computer to the user. So if our program ran and did something and it didn't output anything, we wouldn't know what would happen. And really, the program will be totally useless because we don't get anything out from it. We can't see what's happening. Imagine using a calculator, doing your sum, and not getting anything back. If we didn't have outputs, it would be totally useless. So outputs are like when we type in our calculator, 2 times 2 equals 4. That 4 is our output from the program. You can think about it as well when you text your friends. These messages on the screen from your friends are outputs. And outputs are super, super duper important to have in your program so it actually does something worthwhile and meaningful. So how do we produce an output? We use this thing called the print function. And in programming, we have these things called functions, which are basically words that mean a block of pre-written code that you don't need to worry about what it does. It just does something really useful for you in a single word to make your life so much easier. So the print function right here, we type in what we want to output to the screen like we did with hello world in speech marks and in the brackets. So I'm going to switch back over to the online interpreter right now. And then we can look at this print statement a little bit more. So firstly, we're just printing hello world, exclamation mark, which is cool. But we could print something else. So for example, print hello there. My name is Luke. And you can put any sort of sentence in these speech marks and you'll get it outputted to what we call the console, which is where we get this. You don't need to worry about this green stuff down here. Basically what this is saying, as long as it says program finished with exit code 0, it means you've done well, it means it's ran perfectly and it's absolutely fine. If you do get something else there, it means you've got an error. So what we could look at doing is if you do get something there that doesn't look right, you can put that in the chat and I'm sure Arjun can help with any problems that you're getting along the way. But it's really, really easy to accidentally make mistakes in Python. We do it all the time. I mean, I'm sure Arjun will agree. We've been programming for years and we still make mistakes all the time, and it does happen. So, for example, some mistakes you might get if you don't put a closing speech mark and then you run it, we'll get some kind of weird thing called a syntax error. What that basically means is the grammar of the language is wrong, but we don't need to worry about that. Stick another speech mark in and you're all sorted. So this is how to print things to the screen. So next, let's go back to these slides and look at what we've got next. So here's an example, print in speech marks and inside those brackets, I am 20 years old. Why don't you guys try this at home? And instead of the 20, put in your age. Make sure that you are checking for your speech marks, doing it inside the brackets. Yeah, that should be awesome when you get it out. So I'm just going to do that as well here. So print hello. Oh, if I can spell. Hello, I am 19 years old. Exclamation mark. Don't forget, hit run. And then down in this little box here, you should get your output. Hello, I am 19 years old. And I hope that you guys have been able to do that well. I've seen Oliver can do it. Awesome. That's good news. If you guys want to give us a little thumbs up reaction if you can do it, that'd be awesome. Oh, brilliant. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs. It's really, really good. Awesome. Nice job, Avish. Oh, is that thumbs down? If that's a thumbs down, drop that message in chat, and I'm sure that Arjun will be along to help. Oh, awesome, guys. Ideally, though, if you could leave the chat for just questions, just show me your thumbs up on the camera, that'd be awesome. Brill. Cool. So let's move on. So, like we did, this will output the message I'm 20 years old on screen. So well done if you guys have done that. If you've not, I'm sure that Arjun will be able to help with any issues you've got. We'll get that all sorted. So you guys have got a task, you've got a challenge to do. You've got to output the sentence, I love coding, using print, because you do love coding. Everybody loves coding. Everybody should love coding. It's amazing. So your challenge is output the sentence, I love coding, using print. And then when you've done it, give us a quick thumbs up just on your camera, and then we will move on in a little bit. Whilst you guys are doing it, I'm also going to do it, but I'm going to make some mistakes just so you guys know what to look out for. So first thing I'm going to accidentally do is not put brackets. So brackets are really, really important because it tells the print function what it needs to print out. So here I've got a syntax error and it actually tells me missing parentheses. So what this means is missing brackets. Once again, you could forget a bracket or forget a speech mark and then you'll get a syntax error. There's loads of things. You could accidentally misspell print. So for example, print, and just loads of stuff like that can go wrong. So make sure that you double check your code if there's something dodgy going on. Awesome job, Leo. Nice job, George. I think you've done it. Anthony, awesome. Avish, good. Awesome. Good job, man. It's nice to see so many thumbs up. That's awesome, guys. Nice one, Louis. Thanks, Glenford. Brill. So let's move on. Task 2. I think you guys can do this. I think you're going to be on this. Output your name using print. I reckon you can do this. So give that a quick go. I'll just do it along with you. So print, brackets, speech marks, hello, my name is Luke, exclamation mark. And I'm sure that you guys can all do that. And don't forget, give us a little thumbs up when you've done that. Awesome, Will and Sam, thanks for that little thumbs up.
Cool.
Awesome.
SJ wondering why it doesn't work if print is in capital.
Okay, so that's a really, really good question, actually. So if we do this, if we put print in capital and try it, and then type in hello, we get an error. So in a simple manner, without going too complicated, the lowercase print is sort of telling the computer, when it sees that lowercase print, it knows what to do. As soon as you send in that uppercase print, it looks different. It looks different to the interpreter, and it doesn't know what to do with it. So basically, it's a reserved word, the lowercase print, and that means to the interpreter to output, to do that function. When you put in the uppercase print, it means something totally different to the interpreter, and it doesn't know what uppercase print is. It's not defined as anything. In later lessons, we can talk about why that doesn't work, but for now, it's quite complex, but lowercase print, that's good. So, data. What is data? It's anything. It's text, it's numbers, it's information that we can store on a computer. You guys have got data on your computer right now. Data is being sent around the world, millions and millions of megabytes, terabytes, gigabytes, everything. Data is so important. And data is information that we use in programs to mess with input, to produce output, to do calculations. I mean, when you do 2 times 2 on your calculator, those numbers, that's data, and that's stored inside that calculator for it to output. So how do we store this data on a computer? Especially in a program, we use things called variables, and variables is how we hold this actual data. There are different types of data depending on the type of thing that we want to store. And we'll be going over that in lesson. So let's look at what variables are, because variables are a really fundamental part of programming. Without variables, you can't really do much in a program. So a variable represents a piece of data that's stored on the computer. So how do we produce a variable in Python? Well, this is our example of a variable. We say age equals 20. Now, this might look quite simple, it might look quite confusing, But basically, we have a name of our variable, the age. We have our equals, which means we're assigning it to something. And then we have our data, which is 20. So in this case, 20 is our data that we are assigning to the variable age. We're storing data on a computer in a variable. So we choose names for our variables, such as age. And this is our variable name, like I mentioned, age. And then we have our data, which is 20. Now, it's super, super important that you understand that how we name our variables is really, really important. So age here starts with a capital letter. That means that any time we want to use this variable in the future, it has to start with a capital letter. But don't worry, that'll become nice and clear later. But now that we've set the age variable, we can actually use that in our code, which is really, really cool. So we can do this little snippet of code here, which I strongly urge you guys to try at home on your online interpreter. We've got age equals 20, but don't worry, put that to your age. I'm sure you're not all 20. And then print, like we saw before, in brackets, age. But this time, we're not using speech marks in the brackets. We're just writing age. And then we should get as output from our program what we set to our age variable. Now, I'm just going to do that along here as well as you guys are doing it at home. So I'm going to type in, this time I'm just using a lowercase a, but it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So age equals 19. I can then do print age. We can then hit run. And we can see that in the output window, it says 19. And if you guys can do that, give us a thumbs up reaction or thumbs up on your cam or whatever. Awesome, Neve, good job. Shruti, awesome, good job. Angus, brilliant. Awesome, thank you guys. It seems like we've got some pretty decent programmers here, Arjun. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs.
Yeah, everyone's doing really well. Everyone in the chat seems happy. Good.
Brilliant. Arcaden, awesome. Jude, brilliant.
I got the word age, not the number.
You got the word age. Okay, so I bet what you're doing is writing age in speech marks. So because we're trying to print a variable, we don't want speech marks. Speech marks we use for when we're trying to print a sentence. So let me make that nice and clear for you. So we've got print, hello there, exclamation mark. This is a sentence that I want to print out. So I'm putting that in speech marks. So when we put a variable name in speech marks, it no longer stays as a variable. To print a variable, we don't need speech marks. But something cool that we can do is, don't worry if this gets confusing, you'll understand it eventually. Sentence, a variable name, equals hello there. And then, oops, I spelled that wrong. Then we can actually print out a sentence, and we no longer have to put those speech marks inside the print statement because we're printing a variable. And then we've got 19, hello there. Now this is super, super powerful. And when you get your head around this, it's really, really cool because then you sort of think, what's the actual power of this? And what can I do with it? So if you don't understand this, don't worry. It's something that's really good to go over afterwards and have a little look at. After doing some examples of your own, you'll definitely understand it. But the main thing to remember is if we're printing out a variable, we don't need speech marks. But if we're printing out a sentence, we do need speech marks. So let's switch back to our slides. I hope you all managed to output your age. If you did, that's awesome. So here we go. Here's another example. We need to use those speech marks when we want to store words in variables or sentences in those variables, and then we can print out those variables in the print without the speech marks. It's not something to get too hung up on. Just imagine that when you are storing text, you need speech marks. then whatever we store that text in, we don't need speech marks. So there's a few rules with what we can actually name our variables. We can't name them everything. There's a few limitations on what we can do. So variable names can't have spaces in. So for example, my space name, that doesn't work, because what Python does is it looks through this line and it goes, okay, my must be a variable. What's my assigned to? Oh, space nothing. And it gets confused, and it actually will cause an error in your program, and Python won't be able to run. So don't have spaces in variable names. Instead of spaces, we can use underscores, or we can use dashes if you want spaces. There's a few conventions, things that programmers use to get around this. So like I said, my name equals, and because I'm storing a word, I need speech marks, Luke. This won't run. It will get confused about what my actually is. But if you wanted to have the sort of space effect so it's more readable, you could put a dash, you could put an underscore. What a lot of programmers do is this thing called camel case, where we have my, and then the next word, we just start with a capital letter. So my name equals Luke, and that makes it quite readable. And remember that this, depending on how we capitalize things, makes variables different. So my name here and my name here with a capital N and a lowercase n are different because they're named differently. So let's go back to this. Keep on going through our variable name rules. Some important words and symbols aren't allowed. So you're not allowed to assign a piece of data to the name print, because that's our function. That's what we call a reserved word. That's what the system knows to call that specific method that outputs things to the screen. So we can't assign things to the name like print. You can't use symbols either, because these are looked at by Python as actually mathematical symbols. So it sees this as just a plus. So you put this in Python and it would go nothing plus equals. That doesn't work. That's an error. Generally, with variable names, if you try and think how Python would think, you'll be able to see if it works or not. You can have numbers in your name. So here we've got number underscore 1 equals 5. But you can't have those numbers at the start, because when Python looks at this, it goes, oh, okay, 1. I bet we're doing something mathematical. I bet we'll need to add that or something. And then it sees underscore number, and Python will just get really confused and it will give you another crash. Despite how silly Python may sound, it is really, really powerful. I promise you that. So we've got age equals 19 in a variable, let's say. But we get older, we grow up. Let's say that you come to that program in a year's time and you're no longer 19, you're 20 and you need to update that. Well, easy. We can do the same thing. We can update our variable, like here. Now, why don't you run this code and see what happens? Bear in mind that we're using the same variable name of age throughout. All we're actually doing is just changing the value that we store in age. You could imagine age as a sort of box. Any variable name could be a sort of box, and it's only big enough for one piece of data. But what we can do with that box is open it up, we can take the thing out and put a new thing in. So in this example, we've got a box called age, and inside that box, we're putting the number 20. We print age, so we look in the box and we see 20, so we'll output that. Then we come back to age and we want to set it to 21. So we look in that box, we see 20, we throw that away and put in 21. Close the box, print age, open the box, look inside, oh, we've got 21, let's output that to the screen. So I'll just follow along at home and do this with you guys quickly. So age equals 19, print age, once again, because it's a variable, we're not actually storing anything, we just don't need speech marks. Then age equals 20, print age. Then if I hit run, pardon me, sorry guys, sorry about this. There we go, 1920. That's awesome. So let's keep going. Now, you guys have got a bit of a task to do here, and I believe you guys can do it. I think you're doing awesome so far. So your task is to write your own variable that stores your name. Now it's up to you what you name that variable, how you name it, but your task is to write that variable and store your name in it. So if you guys are able to do that, give us a thumbs up. Any issues, don't worry about sticking it in chat. Awesome. So I'll just do that at home so you guys know what an example looks like. So I'm going to just name the variable my name equals, and because we're going to be storing text, we need speech marks. So I'm just going to put Luke. So this is how we are storing some data, i.e. our name, in a variable. Then we can print that name out afterwards using the print statements that we learnt about before. We can do print brackets my name. Hit run, and then we get our name out. So I've just seen errors from Varsith. You are running the wrong language, so quickly guys, just make sure that up here in the top right of the screen, where it says language, make sure that it says Python 3, not Java or anything else.
Or if you closed it and open it again with the link that I've sent you guys in the chat, that should hopefully resolve it.
Awesome, guys. So I hope that you've managed to do that. If you've not, don't worry about it. It's something that you can look at afterwards. But now, hopefully, because we've got a little bit of time left, we're going to look at these things called inputs. Now, I was on about these earlier at the start of the lesson. Inputs are the opposite of outputs. It's things that we send into the computer from the user. In this example, the computer's asking for a number. And what Python does is when we ask for input from the user, the program actually just waits indefinitely until it gives us something back. So essentially, what the computer would do is just sit there forever waiting for an input if you didn't give it one. So how do we get an input from a user? We can use this thing called the input function, which is input brackets, a bit like print. And then inside those brackets, we can actually type in what we want to ask the user. And the program, like I said, will just wait indefinitely, wait forever until you respond or turn off your computer. So let's go for input. What is your name? Question mark. And I'm going to hit run on this. And then down below in this box, it's going to look slightly different now because we're not going to have that green text. And what that means is the program hasn't finished. So what is your name? I'm going to put in Luke. And then I hit enter afterwards, and then the program finishes with exit code 0. So cool, it's worked, it's awesome. The only thing with this is it's totally useless because we've not actually done anything with it. We've just typed in our name and then the program's ended with no actual outcome. So we can actually store that input value in a variable. But we'll get onto that in a second. So you guys have got a very quick task of asking the user what their age is through the input. Just because of the time that we've got left, and just because I want to get through one or two more things, I'm going to take you guys through that. If you don't understand this, don't worry about that. It's always good to have a look afterwards. But we can do input, what is your name? So remember, input is our function. We need brackets, again, because it is a function. And then inside those brackets, we can type in speech marks, what we want to actually ask the user. So here we go. What is your name? Luke, I think I've totally forgotten to update that. So instead of name, what is your age? And then 19. But this doesn't do anything. This is just asking us for an input and then closing down. It's totally useless. It's like you putting a number into a calculator and then the calculator turning off. It doesn't do anything with that. So what we can actually do is assign the return value, the thing that we ask for input, into a variable. So we can store these as input into a variable so we can use it later on. Let me show you how to do that, guys. So let's have our variable called age. So age equals, we assign it to something. Now what input will do is actually return the data. So we can put age, what is your age, question mark, and then we can make sure that that's worked by using the print function that we looked at earlier, age. We can hit run on that, and then it will ask me for my age at the start. Let me get rid of that just so it's a bit clearer. Let me just get rid of this line. So the program's going to ask me for my age. I'm going to put in 19. And then down below here, it prints my age, which is awesome. So if you guys want to try that along at home, and I'll leave you with this final task that we can look at the start of next week if you guys want. You can create, or your task is to create a program that asks the user for your name, your age, your favorite color, and then for you to print out the responses. So someone could come along to your program, they could type in their name, their age, and their favorite color. So that is your task to do either now or for next week in your spare time, something to have a look at. I'm sure you guys can do it. If you go through the recording of this afterwards, if you're stuck, that'd be really good. There's the answer that I just quickly showed on screen, but don't look at that. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've all learned something. Please do leave us feedback as well. We do love to hear what you guys have enjoyed. We look at every single piece of feedback and work on it. So, you know, anything that you think we could improve on, anything you think we've done well, we'd really, really appreciate that. Yeah, I hope you've learned something. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope we see you next week. We'll be doing lesson 2. We'll be moving on. Do you have any questions for Arjun and I? And if how do we get a copy of these slides? There will be a recording on the actual website that you came on to find this. When is the next class? That's next week.
Your final interpreter screen. Do you have that, Luke?
The final
one, I think, the final task.
Oh, of what it should look like?
I'm assuming so. Andy, do you want to?
Sure. That should be, we should get something that looks a bit like this. So what is your name? Bob Smith. What is your age? 34. What's your favorite color? Blue. Name Bob Smith, age 34, and favorite color? Blue. This time next week, yes, 572409. Interesting name. Love it. Yeah, so any questions, guys? Anything at all? Feel free to ask us. What we'll be doing next week, good question. I believe that Arjun will be taking you through variable types and a little bit of lists, and lists are really, really, really important. Really, really cool. Why are different words different colors? That's a good question, Vorgan. So the interpreter that we use, that link in your browser, colors words differently, so it's nice and clear. So print and input will be a different color to your variable names to tell you that they're different things. Thank you very much for joining us, Oscar. How do you do the output again? I'll very quickly just show you. So output, print, if it's a sentence, put it inside some speech marks. Inside your print. So, hello there. Then hit run. And then you'll get the output here. Oops, why has that come up?
If you guys want to see what's been done, each thing, the session is recorded, so you can go back and watch each task and what Luke's done for each task, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Dev. Gapinder says, will we do other stuff? Yes, this course will take you through the stages to make a really cool, but quite simple Python game that you'll be able to play with you and your mates, and you'll be able to show it off. What is this afternoon session? If that's in regards to the Python, that will be me and Sam going over some for loops later today. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. That's lovely. What happens in the, yeah, I've said that one. Thank you for joining us. We can't do the inputs. It won't let us do another row. So you have to ask input for every line of input that you want. So it'll have to be input for your name, then input for your age, and then a new input for your favorite color. I've used loops. Awesome. Thank you very much, George, for joining us. We do appreciate it. The afternoon sessions are at 3 and 5. But I think the 5 o'clock lesson is one of those 5-star lessons.
Yes, you guys will be making a game, but in the future, it is possible. So you guys will be able to learn that each week.
Yeah. We'll make some, what we basically do through this course and what Arjun will be teaching you is a little bit of programming each time that we can then say, well, look, this is how we can put this into our game, which is awesome. And hopefully you guys will be able to look at that later. I can actually probably quickly show you what the game is going to look like. If I'm still sharing screen, yep, cool. So this is the game. It's a simple matching pairs game if you've ever played that before. It's like where you've got the cards face down and then you take it in turns to flip them up and try and get a matching pair. So enter a row. Oh, sorry about that. Yep, 1. So I've just entered in row A1 and it's revealed the thing behind there. I'm now going to guess D3. And then unfortunately I didn't get a matching number. So the board reset. But don't worry, we'll be going over that again. I'll show you that in a better detail later. Show the answer to the final one. Yep, sure. This is the final task answer. It's good for you guys to see. I hope this is what you guys found.
Excuse me.
Yes, who's got a question?
Yeah,
Yes.
how am I going to find this again? I only barely found it through my work email. So I assume I can just use the same link to get back to your other sessions?
Yeah, I believe so. And we don't actually manage where the videos go, but if you go on the sort of list that shows all of, I'm still screen sharing so I can actually show you, on this list of stuff here. So if you have ever gone onto this bit, you'll be able to see that there's the coding introduction series here. Down here, if you scroll below, this should have the recording for the first session that we're doing today. That should be on, I'm not sure, but it will be on before the next session.
Gotcha.
So you can always look at it again.
Thanks.
Excuse me.
No worries. Yeah, sure. Who's got a question?
Me, Dev.
Dev, awesome.
Will we receive an email when the next session will be coming?
I assume so. Once again, we just sort of come along and do the lesson. We're not sure how the whole back-end system of it works, but if you guys received an email this time, you'll get an email next time, I think.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, Oliver. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Can we only do a matching pair game? Well, that's what we're going to be learning in this series, but you can make any game in Python. It's really powerful. You can do a lot in it.
And the link. What link which link is it? Do you want the link to the interpreter or the work?
Thanks for joining us, Mish. Thank you, Manish.
For the like what you showed for the recording.
What you showed for the recording?
Yeah.
Is that where you were typing the code in, or is it for the next week's session?
Like
Thanks, Manish.
what? Like hearing what you said.
So do you, the recording of this session?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've been on this bit before,
Yeah.
to actually join the class, the sort of class bit will have the video down here after this recording's finished.
Oh.
For you guys to look at in the future.
Okay.
Final test.
Got another question? Ada, is that a question?
Yeah. How do you show graphics on
Good question.
Python?
It's a good question. So there's lots of libraries which are like big collections of code that people have written that you can then sort of throw into your program to display things. It's really, really possible. We won't be going over it in this course, but when you feel comfortable with Python, I'd recommend taking a look into something called Pygame, and that's how you can actually make graphical games in Python.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh yeah, you can also use Turtle. Totally forgot about Turtle. Arash and Anika, good shout. Turtle's a really, really cool way to draw things on the screen. So yeah, Pygame or Turtle. Turtle's probably a good place to start because it's less confusing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you can tell your cousin that you can code, George. Awesome.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys,
awesome.
for your feedback.